APUSH History is considered one of the hardest AP classes you can take, and as there are around 500,000 incoming APUSH students this year, I wanted to make something that would help these incoming students and maybe take a minor level of stress off their shoulders. To start, I know this class seems daunting, and it seems like a lot of work, and the light at the end of the tunnel seems so far away, but I promise you, it goes by pretty quickly. You don't have to worry about understanding a hard math concept, it's just knowing the events, the people, the places, and most importantly, connecting them to each other, and connecting them to the confusing big idea questions they ask you. Also, only watch this video if you really want to do well. If you don't do the work and know the material, you're not going to do well. This advice is also completely based off my personal experience in taking the class. This is just a student trying to help out other students. We'll start with a quick overview of the course. The College Board separates American history into 9 periods. There are specific descriptions on the College Board and Gilder-Lehrman websites, but I'm just gonna quickly give a very basic idea of the periods. I will leave out some important stuff. Period 1, 1491 to 1607, pre-Jamestown, European explorers, and the Columbian Exchange. Period 2, 1607 to 1754, colonial era and colonial relationships with Native Americans. Period 3, 1754 to 1800, tensions that led to the American Revolution and the creation of the United States government. Period 4, 1800 to 1848, the War of 1812, Andrew Jackson, the beginnings of northern and southern tensions, and westward expansion. Period 5, cotton, slaves, the increasing tensions that led to the Civil War, and Reconstruction. Period 6, Industrial Revolution, immigration, westward expansion, political and economic corruption. Period 7, Spanish-American War, Teddy Roosevelt, the Roaring Twenties, the Great Depression, Franklin Roosevelt, and the New Deal, and the World Wars. Period 8, the Cold War, Truman, Eisenhower, Kennedy, Lyndon Johnson, the youth culture movement, women's rights, and the Vietnam War. The last period, period 9, New Republicans, New Democrats, Ronald Reagan, Iraq, Afghanistan, and some LGBT rights. I personally found that periods 4 through 7 have the most content. And yes, I know this sounds like a lot, and it is, but the way they split up the periods does make it less strenuous when separating events in history. Just take it one chapter, one period at a time. With each period, there will be a set of key concepts that come in packet form, and I'll explain how to use these to your advantage later on. If your teacher doesn't print these out for you, just do it yourself. But with 9 periods and 400 years of information, I bet you're asking yourself, how am I going to cram this insane amount of information into my brain? Well, there are a lot of ways to go about this, and you just kind of have to find what's best for you. And if you find yourself not getting good grades on tests or classes, try something different or try a combination of things. The first way is just to read your American pageant textbook and take structured notes. This is what I did. I got a 4 on the test, a B in the first semester, and an A in the second. I know it's dull and boring, but the textbook kind of brings out some personalities sometimes. Think of the history as a grand story that led to the creation of one of the wealthiest, most powerful, fattest countries in the world, rather than just words on a page. You can either write notes and keep a spiraled notebook, or type them and print them out, which is what I did. You read a section, write down the title of the section, then the main idea, and then bullet points under it that includes the specifics. And trust me, when you're taking notes, it's almost impossible to be too detailed, but eventually you realize what's important and what's not to save time and energy. Each chapter took me around 3.5 to 4 hours at the beginning, and by the end I got it down to around 1.5 hours to 2 hours. You get really good at picking out the important stuff. After finishing the chapter, go over your notes again and highlight the key terms and things that you think are important, and that you might go over in class. So here are the pros. You get a complete overall idea of the history rather than just a list of events, and you get around the exact information and evidence that the test will be looking for. You just have to pick it out. Here are the cons. It takes a long time, it's boring, there's a lot of useless specific information that does help you understand the overall time period or event, but it will never be used on a test. But here's what I recommend. Sit down, mentally prepare, turn off your phone and internet, put on some ambient music, I recommend Nujabes, and do the notes. Just do it! I always did each chapter in one sitting at midnight, but if you spread it out, it'll probably be a lot easier, that's just what I did. This is the safest way, but probably least efficient way to get the information. Now hopefully the teacher will go through connections, key concepts, relationships, and the nitty-gritty in class, but the teacher cannot do that if you don't already know the history. Here are some things that you can do along with the notes or do exclusively if you want. Like I said, if you know the history and connect it to the different time periods and the questions they ask you, it doesn't really matter where you get it from. But if your teacher requires you to read the book and he or she is checking your notes, I recommend reading it. online resources. The first is the Gilder-Lehrman site. It's separated by period and gives documents, essays, videos, and a timeline for each period. I recommend the site as an addition after taking the notes, not a substitution. Most teachers will probably have you read the essays, documents, and probably watch the videos as well. The next is AP Notes. Do not use this site as a get out of doing notes free card, like I said, if you want to do well. It is here only if you forget to do them and your teacher is checking them that day, but most teachers already know about this site, so I wouldn't even risk it. This site should only be used to compare the notes that you've already done to see if you've got the important stuff down. Quizlet. It's very popular and very helpful at memorizing key terms, people, court cases, acts, and amendments. It's a really great study tool for these kinds of things. Crash Course on YouTube is also a great way to understand content, if you can process the fast-talking John Green. For tests and getting practice multiple choice questions, you can use AP Study Notes, the Gilder-Lehrman site, and many other places including your teacher. And now, it is time to introduce the glorious Adam Norris, Mr. APUSH Review himself. This man has created over 360 videos going over every chapter, every period, every person, every event, and recently almost every key concept in APUSH. This man is an APUSH god. So if your goal is to do 0 notes and still get a decent score, which is what I still don't recommend, this is your man. Before every test, I would go through the period packet with all the key concepts, fill in the most that I can by yourself and with your notes, and then go through each Adam Norris key concept video. Do a combination of notes, online studying, video watching, you will do fine. Now let's talk about the AP test. Once again, this is scary to think about, but it's better to start thinking about it now rather than a month before the test. The test is 3 hours and 15 minutes, and it's split into 2 sections. Part 1 of the first section is a multiple choice section with 55 questions and 55 minutes. You will get a stimulus that is usually a document from history, a speech, or an excerpt from a historian's writing. What will follow from a source is a set of questions relating to the stimulus that will sometimes directly refer to the passage specifically, or to a time period described in the passage. This is the meat of the test. Part 2 of the first section is the short answer questions section. 4 questions and 50 minutes. Basically, this gives you around 12.5 minutes a question. These questions will usually have multiple parts that you have to answer and will sometimes refer to a picture, graph, or another passage. Here's an example. You can answer part A, part B, and part C, all separate from each other, or you can write it in paragraph form where it's all together. And this is what I recommend because the grader will have to pull answers from your writing. Because you could be having trouble answering part A at the beginning and then end up at the answer by the end, and the grader can just pull that out. Now, if you read a short answer question and you're like, I've got this, I know this material, then I would just go ahead and answer the parts separately, because it shows that you know exactly what you're talking about. One piece of specific evidence is usually enough for each part of the question, but pay attention to what the question is asking as well, especially if it asks the perspective of the writer or the creator of the picture. This, in my opinion, is the easiest part of the test. Section 2, Part 1 consists of a document-based question essay, a DBQ. Disclaimer, if you are an AP World History student, this is very different from the AP World DBQ. The essay is 15 minutes in total, but there is a 15-minute reading period and a 40-minute writing period. This is the more lenient essay, as you're given information to work with if you cannot remember much from the time period. You will get at least 6 documents to around 8 or 9. This will include graphs, photographs, and passages that will relate to one question. You will have to synthesize the documents, create and support an argument while using the documents as evidence, and citing them. The last part is the long essay. It's 35 minutes long and less lenient than the DBQ as it does not give you any background information on the topic, but you do get to pick from 2 different questions to answer from. You will have to rely almost on background information that you remember. The test goes by pretty fast and there isn't a lot of logical thinking, it's just recalling loads of information. But try not to get stuck in that bubble. Now, after you take the test, you might be thinking, there wasn't even a question or mention of this time period. And you're right. From memory, the 2016 test didn't even have anything on Teddy Roosevelt, the Square Deal, FDR, or the Great Depression. But you can't cover 400 years of information in 3 hours, so it's to be expected. I say APUSH isn't hard because of the amount of resources that are available to you as well as your teacher. I hope this video hasn't scared you away, but only made you excited about learning the details of the history of your country, and realizing the mistakes we've done in the past so we don't repeat them again. 'Cause that's what history is all about, right?